Discover the hidden Israelite ancestry of some of the most powerful nations on earth. Watch as Scripture unveils the terrifying future of America and Great Britain as revealed through the Sabbatical and Jubilee years. Discover the identity of Assyria and its role in this final Jubilee cycle. Learn of the pending judgments that are to be soon poured out as a result of transgressing the Sabbatical years. Sighted Moon.
Does knowing the Sabbatical and Jubilee years really matter? Why do we need to learn this? Why is this so important? Most people just disregard it. That's something the Jews do. That's something that you keep when you're in the land. And we'll address that. Here we are in 2 Chronicles. So this is why this is so important. And they burned the house of Elam and broke down the wall of Jerusalem and burned all of its palaces with fire and destroyed all of its valuable utensils. And those who escaped from the sword he exiled to Babel, where they became servants to him and his sons until the reign of Persia. In order, listen carefully, in order to fill the word of Jehovah by the mouth of Jeremiah, until the land had enjoyed her Sabbaths, as long as she lay waste, she kept Sabbath, until 70 years were complete. So right here, you're being told by Jehovah that he is keeping track of the Sabbaths that the land is missing. 70 of them. He counted 70 of them. So from 586 BC, and when you count backward, it takes you at least to the time of King David in 1010 BC. And if they kept some of those sabbatical years, because I would assume that King David did, maybe Solomon did, then this could take you all the way back to the time of Joshua. 586 BC, when you count the sabbatical years, and each of these is a sabbatical year. So here's 586 BC, and we count backwards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like that. Keep coming back. You'll end up at least at the time when King David became king in 1010 BC. At least. Jehovah is keeping track. He's watching. He has a book with your name in it, right? Remember, what do we say during the days of atonement? May your name be found in the book of life. He's keeping a record. So Jehovah does consider these days important. These sabbatical years are important to him. So here's another thing to keep in mind. Why does he do this? Each year, the earth has to work while it grows your food. It misses 52 Sabbaths in a year. There's 52 weeks in a year. So 52 times 7, and you will arrive at 364 days that the earth gets to make up for those years when it had to keep growing your food. The earth gets a Sabbath rest the same as you do every week. And that's just wow. Does any of this matter? Yeah. It matters to Jehovah. It matters big time to Jehovah. Romans 8:19, for the earnest expectation of the creation waits for the manifestation of the sons of Jehovah. It waits for you to learn this so that it can be healed. The earth is waiting for you to start keeping the Torah. Dare I say that the universe is waiting for you to start keeping the Torah? Stop and think that's bigger than wow. When the sons of our Father are keeping the Torah, keeping the Sabbath, the holy days, and the Shemitah year, the sabbatical year, at the right time, the earth is going to be healed. The earth is waiting for you to keep the weekly Sabbath, the holy days of Leviticus 23, and not adding anything to that, and not taking any of them away. And it's waiting for you to keep the sabbatical year. That's not Purim, that's not Hanukkah, that's not Christmas, that's not Easter. That's nothing except what's in Leviticus 23. And if that rubs you the wrong way, then start keeping Daliwa. Daliwa is just another festival of lights. Because that's all you're keeping in December. It's Festival of Lights. And that's all to Satan. It's all to Nimrod. So if I don't tell you, who will? Who will? For the creation was not willingly subjected to vanity, but because of him who subjected it on hope, that the creation itself also shall be delivered from the bondage of corruption. And we've explained to you that corruption took place when Nimrod and Cush changed things and became the hammer that broke in pieces the whole world. That the creation itself also shall be delivered from the bondage of corruption into the glorious liberty of the children of God. And that is you when you're keeping the sabbatical years. When the land gets to rest in that 7th year. Great things happen to the soil. And we know that the whole creation groans and travails. And that's the curses for not keeping it. These are the curses of Leviticus 26 that I've been telling you about, that we're going to look at. This is it right here. Christians, this is Paul talking about the same things that you've discarded and dismissed, calling that the Old Testament. We're not Old Testament people. Then you're going to be just old and dead. Maybe not even get old. And not only so, but ourselves also, who have the first fruits of the Spirit. Even we ourselves groan within ourselves, awaiting adoption and redemption of our body. The earth is waiting for you to get your act together and to keep Torah and to show others how to keep Torah. The first time the sabbatical years are mentioned is Genesis 6:3, and some people object to that. Well, let's look at it. And Jehovah said, my spirit shall not strive with man forever in his going astray. See, men were going astray. They're doing their own thing back then too. He is only flesh. He is flesh, and his days shall be 120 years. And some people lock themselves into that position that that's all that can mean. Show me people that are living to be 120 years old. If you die at 80, you got ripped off. If your dad died at 60, Jehovah didn't keep his word here. Are people, is the average age of man 120? No. Well, let's take the people that lived before the flood. They lived to be 930, 960, 700. Let's average them in. Well, it's hard to figure out. But there's been a lot more people since then who've only lived to 50, 40, and 60. So I'm putting to you that this year, this word years, is not years. So we look it up in the Hebrew, 8141 is Shaneh, Shana. The first form being in plural only, the second form being feminine. And from 8138, a year as a revolution of time. A whole age, old, a year. So this first mention tells us that man will have 120 periods of time. It is the only place this is said. So many people then jump on the bandwagon, having said to me this is only about years, 120 years, the average age of man. They then jump on the bandwagon and they say that that is 120 times 50 to get 6,000 years. I'm just doing the same thing they're doing, that they just told me they wouldn't do. It's 120 times the Jubilee cycles. That's what they've just done. Our difference is whether it's 50 or another way of counting the Jubilee cycle. And we're going to show you that here today. People also say this was 120 years that Noah preached to the people on the earth. All you have to do is do the chronology, and it does not add up. Noah only preached to the people for 98 years. Do the math. It's simple. 1, 2, 3. So this is a revolution of time, 120 revolutions of time. The next place this is mentioned, the next place the Jubilee years are mentioned in your Bible is Exodus 21. This is before they enter the land of Israel, before they cross the Jordan. This is why they are still at Mount Sinai. These are the right rulings which you are to set before them. When you buy a Hebrew servant, he serves 6 years, and in the 7th year he goes out free for nothing. If he comes in by himself, he goes out by himself. If he comes in married, then his wife shall go out with him. If his master has given him a wife, and she has borne him a sons or daughters, the wife and her children are her master's, and he goes out by himself. And if the servant truly says, I love my master, my wife, and my children, let me not go out free, then his master shall bring him before Elohim, and shall bring him to the door of or to the doorpost, and his master shall pierce his ear with an awl, and he shall serve him forever. They're not in the land of Israel, and they're practicing the sabbatical year of rest, of letting the slave go free. Again, that ties into the 8th day, right there, the 7th millennium. You're going to go free. This is part of our ketubah, our marriage contract between you and Jehovah at Mount Sinai. You're not in the land and you're already keeping it. It's a marriage contract. And you have agreed to these terms by being in the loins of those people at Mount Sinai. And if you weren't even there by that, we're going to show you how something else proves that you are confessing and admitting to this in your New Testament understanding. The next time we read about the Sabbatical and Jubilee years is in Exodus 23. Again, they are not at Mount Sinai. But we're also given a clue here as to how the sabbatical years work, because you're comparing them directly to the Sabbath, the weekly Sabbath. And for 6 years you are to sow your land, and shall gather its increase. But in the 7th year you are to let it rest, and shall leave it, and the poor of your people shall eat. They can eat off your land. And what they leave, the beasts of the field shall eat. So you got to leave your white picket fence open so the rabbits can eat your lettuce. Do the same with your vineyard and your olive yard. And look, the very next verse is comparing this to the Sabbath, the weekly Sabbath. 6 days you are to do your work, and on the 7th day you rest, in order that your ox and your donkey might rest, and the son of your female servant and the sojourner be refreshed. A direct comparison showing you that the 7th day Sabbath and the 7th year sabbatical year continue every seven, whether it's days or years, every 7, repeatedly over and over. There is no extra day, there is no extra year added in there. Huge clue. Huge clue. Let's go to Leviticus 25. Let's read the first part, because a lot of people just skip right over this. We're going to go Leviticus 25, 1 to 13. And I've made a lot of assumptions that people just know this stuff. So I'm going to try and be more diligent and read a lot of stuff to them. And the Lord, verse 1, the Lord spoke to Moses on Mount Sinai. So he's on Mount Sinai when he's given this command to Israel. Why? Because Moses can do the chronology and he knows where they will be later on. Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, when you come into the land which I give you, then the land shall keep a Sabbath to the Lord. Huge clue. The first year they come into the land of Israel, they cross the Jordan, that first year is a sabbatical year. Big clue, jumping off the page at you. But which one? Next verse. 6 years you shall sow your field, 6 years you shall prune your vineyard, and gather its fruit. But in the 7th year there shall be a Sabbath of solemn rest, for the land a Sabbath to the Lord. You shall neither sow your field nor prune your vineyard. So that means you don't plant and you don't harvest. You just let it grow wild that year. Oh, now here's something else. Verse 5. What grows of its own accord of your harvest you shall not reap, nor gather the grapes of your untended vine, for it is a year of rest for the land. So your land is still going to grow stuff, but you just can't harvest it. And the Sabbath produce of your land shall be food for you. Oh, there you go. Anything that grows of itself that you didn't plant, if it grows, you can eat it. It's called voluntary growth or voluntary produce. And the Sabbath produce of the land shall be for you, be food for you, your male and female servants, your hired man and the stranger who dwells with you. For your livestock and the beasts that are in your land, all its produce shall be for food. So you open up your fences and let your cows in your garden. You let your neighbors come over. You let anyone who wants it to have it. It's for everybody. You should be able to go and eat in their yards too. But because not everyone is practicing this yet, they might have buckshot waiting for you. So just check. It'd be a good opportunity to introduce them to this at that time. Verse 8. And you shall count 7 Sabbaths of years for yourself, 7 times 7 years. And the time of the 7th Sabbath of years shall be to you 49 years. This reads exactly the same way it does in Leviticus 23 about Shavuot, about Pentecost. Then you shall cause a trumpet. So after the 49 years, after the 49th years, and you are now into the 50th year, then you shall cause the trumpet of the Jubilee to sound on the 10th day of the 7th month. This trumpet blast is not to warn you that a sabbatical year or Jubilee year is coming. This trumpet blast is to tell you that you are now in the 50th year. It's not a warning that is coming. It's announced in the year, the 50th year. On the Day of Atonement, you shall make the trumpets to sound throughout all your land. And you shall consecrate the 50th year, because that's when you're blowing the trumpet, and proclaim liberty, freedom, throughout all the land to all its inhabitants. It shall be a jubilee for you, and each of you shall return to his possession. This is huge. When you count out all the Jubilee cycle and you see where we are, remember, we're going to show you what 2033 is. That's when you sound the trumpet, because we're about to go back to the land for the sabbatical millennium. That 50th year shall be a jubilee to you. In it you shall neither sow nor reap what grows of its own accord, nor gather the grapes of your untended vine. For it is a jubilee. It shall be holy to you. You shall eat its produce. There you can still eat what it grows of itself. In this year of jubilee, each of you shall return to his possession. The next jubilee year, ladies and gentlemen, you will be in your inherited places in Israel. Think about that. The next jubilee year, you will be at your inherited land. So what we just read here goes back to verse 2, right? The jubilee year, the first year they're in the land, that's a jubilee year. Okay, I got to prove this to you. I don't want you to believe me. So some people will argue it is only for when you are in the land that you are to keep the sabbatical year. Based on this verse, which we've just read, but we've also just read where it's telling you about the Jubilee year is at this time. But let's just say they're right. Let's say that I don't want to say doubting Thomas, because Thomas wasn't really a doubter. He was just trying to prove things. But let's say these people are right and that this is only for when you're in the land. And that's the argument, and yes, you're right. So if that's the case, then when we go to Deuteronomy 18 verse 9, it says, when you come into the land which Jehovah your God gives you, you shall not learn to do according to the abominations of those nations. So when we come into the land, because we're not in the land now, we can learn these things. There shall not be found among you anyone who makes his son or daughter to pass through the fire, or that uses divination, or observes the clouds, observer of clouds, or a fortune teller, or a witch, or a charmer, or a consulter, or familiar spirits, or a wizard, or one who calls to the dead. But because we're not in the land, we can do that, and it's okay. Yeah, what? That's the argument being presented for not keeping the sabbatical year, because we're not in the land. So because we're not in the land, it says when you come into the land, you're not to do these things. So because you're not in the land, I'm saying, using the same argument, the same logic that these people are doing, we can do these things. And you just said, what? Because you know that's wrong. So therefore, what I'm saying, by not keeping the sabbatical Jubilee years, you know that to be wrong. What? Okay, here we go again. Leviticus 19:23. When you come into the land. So now, because we're not in the land, all these things it's about to say we can do, right? No. But using the same logic for not keeping the sabbatical year, that's what I'm doing. I'm just showing you how wrong. I'm learning how wrong that argument is when you compare it to Scripture. And you use the same logic that they're using. Leviticus 23. When you come into the land, verse 26, you shall not eat anything with blood in it. But because we're not in the land, we can eat the blood. You shall not divine or conjure spirits. But because we're not in the land, we can do that. We can go to fortune tellers. Leviticus 19:27. You shall not round the side of your head or mar the edge of your beard. So that means you can't get looking like the priest during the Middle Ages and tonsure your head. Well, yes, we can. We're not in the land. We can do the things to the dead, mar our beards like punkers do for the dead. We're not in the land. It's okay. Verse 28, you shall not make any cuttings on your flesh for the dead, nor print any marks on your arm or tattoos. I am Jehovah. Well, we're not in the land, so we can get tattoos. We're not in the land. We can lash ourselves and cut ourselves for the dead. Because we're not in the land. Verse 23, and when you shall come into the land, so there it is again. Verse 29, you shall not prostitute your daughter to cause her to be a whore, lest the land go a-whoring and the land become full of wickedness. But we're not in the land, so you can prostitute your daughter. Woo-hoo! Oh, no one's cheering that one. Do you see the illogical argument here? You shall keep my Sabbaths and revere my sanctuary. I am Jehovah. But we're not in the land, so we don't need to keep the Sabbath. We know that every one of these arguments I just presented are wrong. We are to keep the Sabbath. We are not to prostitute our daughter, and we are not to pass our children through the fire to Molech. We are not to worship the dead by cutting ourselves or tattooing ourselves or marring our beards or our head. And even though we're not in the land, we know that to be true. Therefore, because we're not in the land, we also know we are to keep the sabbatical year and to let our land rest no matter where we are in the world, no matter where we are in the universe. You see the argument that they present. And I just presented you an argument to give back to them. Isaiah 66:1. So says Jehovah, heaven is my throne, the earth, all of it, is my footstool. Where then is my house that you build for me? And where is the place of my rest? If the earth is his footstool, how can it be only for in the land that we keep the sabbatical years? It's for everywhere. So I'm not done with that argument yet. I even go to the Jerusalem Talmud, or the Babylonian Talmud. And here we have the rabbis arguing, discussing about the sabbatical and Jubilee years and what they're going to do with it. And they conclude that it must be kept outside of Palestine. This is the Babylonian Talmud. It must be kept outside Palestine. So there goes that argument. Poof, out it goes. It's done. It's to be kept everywhere by everybody. It's a commandment of Jehovah. It's part of the marriage contract that we have agreed to keep at Mount Sinai. So next question, how do we know when the sabbatical and Jubilee years are? How can we prove that? I've just mentioned to you in Leviticus 25:2, speak to the children of Israel and say to them, when you come into the land which I give you, then the land shall observe a Sabbath to you. I'm saying that that's a Jubilee year. So, how do we prove this? Well, we got to do some math and add things up and do the chronology in Genesis to get to this point. This is when they cross over the Jordan. But this here is a huge clue as to when a Jubilee year is. And it's the first Jubilee, I believe, is mentioned in the Bible. So if we do all the chronology and we do it correctly, we should arrive at this year, the first year, being a Jubilee year. And if that's right, then this proves that the 50th year is also the first year. It's one of those extra proofs. So let's start undoing that. So in the back of the Prophecies of Abraham, you've got your chronology charts, but in case those of you at home don't have that, we're going to do the math for you. We're going to take you through the chronology, and we're going to show you this stuff step by step, and I'm going to show you where most people make their mistakes. It's really, really, really simple. Believe me, it's simple. And I know some of you are sitting there, no, it's not, it's math. But if you have the charts, it's even simpler. So from the creation account, we have Adam, and we have it all the way up to the time of Abraham. And all you have to add up is the number of years from one child being born to the next. And I get a total of 1948 years. So there's all the years. When Adam was 130, he gave birth to Seth. When Seth was 105, he gave birth to Enosh. And all the way down, Canaan, Mahalalel, Jared, Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech, and then Noah. Noah was born in the year 1056 from the creation of Adam. Nobody disagrees with that. Everyone knows when the flood took place, 1656 after the creation. There's not any disputes on this part of the chronology thus far. So here's where the first problem comes that some people get tripped up. Now Noah was 600 years old when the flood waters were on the earth. So the year of the flood is 1656. Again, everyone agrees with that. What they miss or misunderstand is because in Genesis chapter 5, verse 32, it says that all the sons of Noah were 500 years, or they were born when he was 500 years old. So they say that Shem was born when he was 500 years old. But they missed this verse in chapter 11, verse 10, because it says that Arphaxad was born 2 years after the flood. 2 years after the flood, when Shem was 100. So now you got to do that math, and then you keep that in mind with Genesis 5:32, that is just a general statement that Noah was about 500 years old when he had his kids. But Shem was born when Noah was 502. It's a generalized statement here. When you get to chapter 11, it's more specific, and that's the one you have to use. You can't just discard it. So that's where some people get tripped up. So now we have Noah was 502 years old when Shem was born. Shem is 100 when Arphaxad was born. 35 for Salah, 30 for Eber, 34 for Peleg, 30 for Ruah, 32 for Serdug. Nahor was 29, and Terah was 70. Whoops. People are going to say, no, Terah wasn't 70. Okay. But up until Terah, other than this one little problem with Noah being 502, everyone understands that. So check that out. And let's keep going. Terah was 70, I say. Now I say that because I've done all the homework, I've done all the different possibilities. Some people say Terah was 130. Let's say you're right. Let's prove it. Prove it. Prove all things. So if Terah was 130, like some people say, then let's do the chronology, and I do it in the book, the Sabbatical Jubilee years, remembering the Sabbatical Jubilee years. I do it with Terah being 130, and I do the math for you. I do the math for you because I know some of you are challenged by that. And I also do the math for Terah being 70. And we do two charts. And we see, because the proof is in the pudding. The proof is in the pudding. That proof will be in the pudding when we get to the promised land. And when we get to the promised land, then we have to see that adds up to be a Jubilee year. So when you add up all of this, then we know that Abraham was born in the year 1948 after the creation of Adam. In the book of Jasher, this is one of the little proofs that backs up my position, it says that Terah was 70 years old when he gave birth to Abraham. But that's not good enough. We got to prove this. So I do the charts for you in the book. And if you haven't got a book, take one. If you can pay for it, today's the Sabbath, you're not paying for it today. If you can pay for it, great. If not, then take it. Don't leave here without it if you'd like to learn more about the Sabbatical and Jubilee years. So we got the 2 lists coming down. I'm going to just work on the 1 so I don't confuse you. It's in the book if you want to double check, because those numbers don't work. Now, we have a problem. When we get to the middle of Genesis, we don't really have an exact, easy to follow chronology. We have Abram leaving Haran when he was 75 years old in chapter 12. We don't have any dates for the rest of these chapters until chapter 17, when we're told Abram is 99 and Ishmael is 13. So by doing the math, we can know that if you take 13 away from 99, that'll give you 86. You give 1 year for the pregnancy of Hagar, and that'll give you the year 85. So we have 85 on one side and 75 on the other, and we know that the covenant was made with Jehovah in between here at some point. So what I do in the book for you, again, just for you, just for some of you, I go through every possible combination. There's 10 years there, and we got to use one of them because we need to know when the covenant was made to go 430 years to the Exodus. So we got to know when the covenant was made. So I do every year for you because you needed to see that. Now, because I already figured it out, and when I first did, I just said split the middle, take it in the middle, let's take a shot in the middle, see how close we are. So I chose 80. And when I did it with 80, I'm just checking. I'm not sure if I got the right number yet. Maybe it was 82, maybe it's 83, I don't know. But I just picked 80 and I said, let's go forward and see what happens. We're also given another clue in Genesis 15:13. We're given the clue that his children, his descendants, Abram's children, Abram's descendants, will be mistreated in a country not their own for 400 years. And the 400 years and the 430 years both conclude at the Exodus. Okay, so now you got to get a little more precise here in our count, because his descendants must match up with Abraham, and they both got to equal the same amount at the Exodus. All we're doing is adding and subtracting. So Isaac was born when Abram was 100. This year that Isaac was born, because Abram was born in 1948, Isaac was born in 2048 after the creation of Adam. So we're given this clue, another clue here in Genesis 21. And the child grew and was weaned, and Abram made a great feast the same day that Isaac was weaned. And Sarah saw the son of Hagar, the Egyptian, which she had borne unto Abram, mocking. Now this, I believe, is very watered down or polite. What happened here is Isaac is now having what I say is the first bar mitzvah. I'm saying this took place when he was 10. And you're saying, whoa, he can't be 10. He's being weaned off. Well, that doesn't mean he was on her breast for 10 years. What that means is he's now coming of age where he can accept the truth and has to be responsible for it. He is now a responsible adult, and now he must be responsible for his actions. And that's what a bar mitzvah is. It's a change from a child to adult who's now going to be responsible. But Ishmael never had that. We don't read that he ever had one. So he's mocking. Now when you go and look at some of the other stories about this, it says in the legend and other books, it says that Ishmael was standing with a knife ready to kill Isaac. That's when Sarah saw him. It also says that Ishmael and Isaac were out in the field playing catch. Ishmael was shooting arrows. He's the hunter. And Isaac was playing catch. All right? The Bible doesn't say that, but these are stories, outside stories. And that's why Sarah had them put out. So, we now have Abram born, and I'm just going with this one theory for so far. You can try all the other ones you want. Abram was born in 1948. He was 80 years old when he made the covenant with, or when Jehovah made the covenant with him. and 430 years later to the Exodus gives you a total of 2,458 years from the creation of Adam to the Exodus. Then Isaac is born 100 years after Abraham, 2048. He's 10 years old when the mistreatment begins, and 400 years later is the Exodus. And it does work out, 2458. So we got two things that are matching. Okay, we still have to get to when they enter the promised land. So right here is the Exodus. We got two of those. They both match. So now what most people would do next is they would add 40 years onto that. There's 40 years wandering in the wilderness. But there's a mistake here. And this is where people start to get a little dicey. Joe, Numbers 10, verse 11. And it came to pass on the 20th day of the second month, in the second year. This is the second year after the Exodus, that the cloud was taken up from the tabernacle of the testimony. And that's when they went to the wilderness of Paran. And that's when they sent out the 12 spies. And that's when they came back with the evil report. And then that is when the 40 years of wandering in the wilderness began. The proof is in the pudding. So 2458 from the creation of Adam until the Exodus, plus 2 years from the arrival at Mount Sinai until the curse in the wilderness of Paran, plus the 40 years of wandering in the land, and that totals 2,500 years from the creation of Adam until the first year when they enter the promised land. Okay, so now you got to do some math. And this is going to get a little dicey, depending on which way you want to do it. But I'm telling you, and we're going to show you in a couple minutes, that a Jubilee cycle is 49 years, and the 50th year is also the first year. So you're counting by 49s, you're not counting by 50s. So let's take the 2,500. When you divide that by 49, or multiply 51 times 49, you'll get 2499. 2499 is the 49th year. That means that the year 2500 is the first year and a Jubilee year. Therefore, what I'm saying is correct. But Joe, the year 2500, you can divide that by 50, so that also works. Okay, I'll give you half a mark for that. We're going to prove that wrong in a bit. But let's just say you're right. Let's just say you're right. Hold that thought. So now, using the 50-year count and the 49-year count, we have the year 2500 as the year that they enter the promised land, and it works for both counts, technically, because 51 Jubilees times 49 gives you 2499, and the following year, the 50th year, would be the year 2500. So then when it says in Leviticus 25:2, speak to the sons of Israel and say to them, when you come into the land which I give you, then the land shall keep a Sabbath to Jehovah. You shall sow your fields. So there's your clue. It's a Jubilee year. So now we've proven this to be correct by just doing the math, adding up the chronology in Genesis. We've now proven this Leviticus 25:2 to be a Jubilee year. Okay. So now we have to find out, do we count by 50s, because that also worked, or do we count by 49s, because that also worked. They both worked from this. Okay, let's start figuring this stuff out. So how to count a sabbatical and Jubilee year. Each year we have an annual reminder of how to count the sabbatical and Jubilee years. It's called Shavuot. On the day, in Leviticus 23:10, speak to the children of Israel, and you shall say to them, when you come into the land which I give you and shall reap its harvest, you shall bring a sheaf of the first fruits of your harvest to the priest. So if you don't have first fruits, if you don't have the barley, you can't do this. It's first fruits. It's not last fruits. Because if you don't get the barley right at the beginning and you wait a few more days or weeks, it bends over and it drops its seeds, and then all you got is empty husks. And you're not going to give Jehovah the last of the crop. It's your first fruit. So it's important to determine when the barley is ripe. And that's why we use the barley to determine when the first month is going to begin. Because if you don't have barley, you can't do this commandment. And like I showed you before, the barley represents the first wave offering of the saints being raised up from the dead. This is an important feast. Leviticus 23:10, and he shall wave the sheaf before Jehovah for your acceptance. On the morrow, on the day after the Sabbath, the priest shall wave it. That's the weekly Sabbath. Look up the word Sabbath here. It's 7676. Sabbath, weekly Sabbath. If it was a high holy day, that would be 7677 as Sabbaton. So this is the day after the weekly Sabbath, and that is the first day of the week. And from the morrow, after that weekly Sabbath, from the day that you brought the sheaf of the wave offering, you shall count for yourselves 7 completed Sabbaths. Now, I like to do this with a demonstration with a 7-year-old because I know all the adults have trouble counting to 7, and a child can do this and not have any problem at all. They are unencumbered with a whole bunch of other stuff that's been filling up their brains like yours have all these years. So, verse 16. Until the morrow after the 7th Sabbath. So the day after the 7th Sabbath is the first day of the week. And that first day of the week is the 50th day. Until the morrow after the 7th Sabbath, you count 50 days. Then you shall bring a new grain offering to Jehovah. That's the wheat offering. That's Shavuot. That's Pentecost. It's Pentecost Sunday. It's the first day of the week. The wave offering of barley is made on the Sunday during the days of unleavened bread. The second wave offering of 2 leavened loaves is then made 50 days later and is called Shavuot, and it too is on a Sunday, the first day of the week. Remember when we did the comparison back in Exodus 23, I believe it was? 7 days the Sabbath. 7 days the Sabbath. Every 7 days. There is no 8th day here and going into like going 50, then 1. 49, 50, 1. That's not what's going on here. It goes 49, 50, and 1 at the same time because then the next day is the second day. The 7th day Sabbath continues to be 7 days apart. Now we go to Leviticus 25 about the Sabbatical and Jubilee years. So we're comparing them one to the other. They're just exactly the same thing. So Leviticus 23, there it is for the Pentecost, Shavuot. Now for the Jubilee cycle, here it is. And Leviticus 25:8, you shall number 7 Sabbaths of years to you, 7 times 7 years. And the time of 7 Sabbaths of years shall be 49. Then you shall cause the trumpet of the Jubilee to sound on the 10th day of the 7th month in the 50th year. It doesn't say that, but that's what it's saying. On the Day of Atonement, the trumpet shall sound throughout all your land. So the 49th year is over. We are now into the 50th year, which is also the first year. Just the same as it is in Leviticus 23. And you shall make the 50th year holy 1 year, 1 full year, and proclaim liberty throughout the land to all its inhabitants. It shall be a jubilee to you, and you shall return each man to his possession. You have 50 days for Pentecost. On the 50th day is Pentecost, after the 7th Sabbath. You have 49 days, 49 years for the sabbatical years. And on the 50th year, the same as Pentecost, you have the 50th year, and that's the first year also. Now that I got you totally confused, because I'm all messed up here thinking about it, we got to go to some numbers. When you count the weekly Sabbath the same way we count the sabbatical years, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Kids, tell your parents how to do this. The Sabbath day and the sabbatical year are identical. We showed you that in Exodus. So when we do this, we count 7 sabbatical years, 7 sabbatical or weekly Sabbaths to get to 49. It's the same. Leviticus 23 and 25 are the same. 7, that's the first week, that's the first 7 years. 7, that's the second week, the second 7 years. 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, a total of 49. Okay, everyone got that? Everyone gets that? But here's where they don't. Here's where they separate the men from the boys. So as we continue our count, we go 47, 48, 49, 50, which is also the first year, same as Pentecost is the first day. And that 50 is then followed by 2, 3, 4. So 47, 48, 49, 50, 2, 3, 4. It is not 47, 48, 49, 50, 1. It is not followed by 1. We count like this so that from the Sabbath to one sabbatical year to the next is just 7 years. In the exact same context, Pentecost Sunday is the 50th day and also is the first day of the week. If you were to add 50, then 1, so we got 49. Everyone's got that right? 49, 50, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 is what they're saying. That means that in here you got an 8-year or 8-day period. And we showed you in Exodus, it's 7, it's 7, it's 7, continually, forever and ever. When you throw 50 in there and then start over with 1, you end up with an 8-day or an 8-year period. And it just doesn't work. The 50th day is the same as the first day. The 50th year is also the same as the first year in the next count. Okay, you don't have to believe me. Let's prove it. We've already gone through that, and both ways work on this. Both ways work. We have to prove this. We know that Joshua entered the promised land on a Jubilee year. And we know that that was 2,500 years after the creation of Adam. So we've got that from the pages of your Bible. We've proven it. We've just done the chronology. But we still got this little bit of unsure which way to use, 49 or 50. How do you do it? The chronology in Genesis, we cannot reckon to our time period now. There's a step in between that we have to figure out. But we do have a chronology from the time of the Assyrians all the way down to our day today. Edwin R. Thiel, in his book, The Mysterious Numbers of the Hebrew Kings, shows us there are 2 dates. The Assyrians kept their chronology through Emu and Limu lists, recording each and every one of their kings all the way down to our time. And then Ptolemy takes those same lists and overlaps them with the Babylonian kings and brings that all the way down to 161 AD. And then Ptolemy also uses 80 astronomical calculations, which we can duplicate at NASA to prove that these years are accurate. So from 970 some odd years all the way down to our day today, we have a chronology that is provable and accurate, and nobody dismisses it. Okay, so what? We are looking for the Hebrew chronology. We have no records, 0 records of when the Hebrew kings existed. Nada, nothing. If it were not for the Assyrians recording this stuff, we would still have nothing. But the Assyrians did record it. We have 2 records of them interacting with the state of Israel. One of them is the Battle of Karkar in 853 BC, in which Ahab dies, and that's 1 Kings 22. So the Assyrians record this battle. Now we have something to work with. And then you can work with that. You know when Ahab lives, but there's some other stuff there that, okay, it's a little bit dicey. So not only that, Jehovah gives us another date through the Assyrians. And that is the year 701 BC when Sennacherib comes against Jerusalem. That year is undisputable. All renowned chronologists accept this date as 701 BC when 2 Kings 19:29 takes place. So now we have 2 confirmed solid dates of 853 BC and 701 BC that tie in the Assyrian chronology with the Israelite chronology. And if it wasn't for these 2 dates, we wouldn't know when the kings of Israel ever existed. This is big and important. And these dates are undisputable. All chronologists around the world, all reputable chronologists agree that these dates are right. So from these two dates, we can now do the calculations to figure out when the kings of Israel existed. And we know from that, because we can go both ways from these dates based on what it says in 1st, 2nd Kings. So this is huge. We have 4 Assyrian chronologies called eponym, from 911 to 701. So I said 977. So it's 911 to 701 BC. Now they are overlapped by 7 Assyrian chronologies called Limu lists, which go from 872 to 660. So they overlap each other. Therefore, we can compare one to the other and make sure that they're both accurate. And that way we know they're solid. And then Ptolemy does the same thing, and he overlaps again the Babylonian kings from 747 to 161 Common Era. And then we have the 80 astronomical sightings of the moon and the stars and comets that we can pinpoint exactly and know for sure that these dates are right. Wow. This, like for me, this was like finding pure gold. So 701 is now an absolute chronological benchmark date in history. It is recorded by the Assyrians and in your Bible. And it is not disputable. It is undisputable. Chronologists do not argue about this date. The dates that they argue about are anything before 900 BC. Those are the time periods that are dicey. The periods of the judges is very dicey. So we read of this event in 2 Kings 19:29. Now this should be highlighted yellow, stars, rocket ships coming off your page. This is a huge scripture, and it's recorded in 2 Kings, it's recorded in Isaiah, or Chronicles, and I think Isaiah. 2 Kings 19:29. We're going to read it nice and slow because I know I go too fast sometimes because I speak Canadian. And this is a sign for you. The first clue right there, this is a sign. The sign is a Sabbath. The Sabbath is your sign. It's a mark on your hand and it's a mark on your forehead. The Sabbath, how you earn your living with your hand, how you keep it holy with your mind. This is telling you something. Jehovah is saying this has something to do with your Sabbath. It's a sign for you. It's how he marks you. It is how he seals you by you keeping a Sabbath. And it is the only thing that identifies you from the rest of the world, for those people who do not keep those Sabbaths. This year, when he got this message, this year you eat what grows of itself. So he doesn't plant. In the second year, what springs from that. And in the third year, sow and reap and plant vineyards and eat their fruit. So we're told in the third line to sow and harvest, but in the first two, we're not. Now, if I had a 7-year-old here, they'd say that was a 49 and 50th year, because it's obvious. But some of the most renowned chronologists leave this out. They do not use this in their explanation of when the Sabbatical and Jubilee years are, because it identifies precisely when they are, and they don't like it because it messes up their theory, so they leave it out. That, to me, is the same as telling a lie, by not including all your facts. And this is a shame. So let's look at this again. And this is a sign. This is a Sabbath to you. It's some sort of sabbatical thing to you. This year you eat what grows of itself. That year was 701 BC. Undisputable date. So we know that 701 BC is some sort of sabbatical year because they're not planting or sowing. And in the second year, that's 700 BC. Whoa, this is huge. When do you have a back-to-back sabbatical year? A 49th and a 50th. Now you know when the 49th year was, and now you know when the 50th year was. Wow. And we also know that the third year, 699 BC, was not a sabbatical year or a Jubilee year. This is the second and last year Jehovah gives you, in which he tells you a Jubilee year. The first one was when Joshua enters the promised land. This is the next one. This is the last one. So somehow we got to figure out how to connect those two together. But we still got this problem of 50-49. 50-49, which way are we going? I'm siding on one side, but you know, these guys, the 50 guys still got a case. Now we have to go somewhere else. Now we're going to go to the history. The actual history that actually records when sabbatical and jubilee years were. Nehemiah 8:18 talks about a sabbatical year. That year turns out to be 456 BC. And if you look in the charts in the back of your Prophecy of Abraham book, that is a 49th year. We didn't know that when we were first looking at it. It just turned out to be that way. We have also one here in 1 Maccabees 16:14 in Joseph Antiquities, 162 BC. Now the professional chronologists that talk about the sabbatical and jubilee years, Wacholder, Zuckerman, Schurer, and Marcus, these are the pros. They know this stuff. Everyone believes them. They leave out this one. Two of them do. And the other two leave out this one because they're bickering back and forth as to which one's right. So they leave them out. And they all leave out 2 Kings 19:29 because it doesn't match their theory. Here's a good Jew, Julius Caesar. He records in 43 BC another sabbatical year. And he's Jewish, right? Who knew? No, he's not. He's Roman. Josephus records these years as well. And the thing I get so upset about people playing Hanukkah, telling that lie and spreading it around, is because Hanukkah covers up this story and this story. And the reason those guys want to leave this out is because they're trying to prove that the sabbatical year and that the year begins at Rosh Hashanah. Exodus 12:2 says your year begins in the spring at Passover. When you stop playing Hanukkah and you actually read the book of Maccabees, because they only read that one little bit for Hanukkah. Yes, I don't keep Hanukkah. Neither should you. Don't add to Torah. Am I getting you mad yet? Good. The reason they leave this out and this one out, because it tells you that the year begins in Aviv. John Hyrcanus, I believe it's this time, or it could be that one. I forget right now. I get them mixed up. John Hyrcanus became king of Judah. His brothers were killed. His father was killed. But his mother and another brother and some other siblings were taken to the city, which is down in Jericho now. And John Hyrcanus is going after him, and he's going to kill the guy that killed his family and rescue his mom. So he lays siege to the city. I forgot the name of the city, but it's right beside Jericho. So he comes, he puts siege around the city. No one can get in and get out. So this guy that did the murdering takes his mother up on the wall in front of the whole Jewish army and rapes her and beats her and tortures his brothers in front of the whole army. And John Hyrcanus is flipping out. He's going to kill this guy, but he can't get in yet. He's got to lay siege a little bit. That's the way they fought at that time. It now comes to, and it says, it comes to the 7th or the 11th month. The 11th month. And it says, John Hyrcanus had to break off the siege against this evil person and leave his mother and his brother there in order to send the soldiers back so they could keep the sabbatical year, which was approaching at Aviv. He kept the sabbatical year and let his mom die. His mother told him to do it. Stop playing Hanukkah. Stop playing that lie and read what this book says and learn when the sabbatical and jubilee years are, because they're right there. They're right there, and you don't know it. They've been there all this time, and why have we not seen it? Because we want to light a menorah. Now we got 14 dates. These are artifacts that have been found. Common era, common era, common era. These are 14 dates. They are all sabbatical years. And guess what? Okay, so here's your proof. Oh! Because something else happened here this week. We have 2 new dates. We have tombstones from Zoar, south of the Dead Sea. And I forgot the dates and I forgot to bring them with me, but they prove 2 more years on here that we didn't know about until this week. Yes. Anyway, so here's the exciting thing. When you count by 7 from each of these dates, including the 2 new ones that we just got, marked on tombstones that are in the museum in Jerusalem right now. Wow. When you count by 7, each and every one of them matches. And when you count by 7 and you go back to 701 BC, it matches. Wow. We can know every sabbatical year throughout all of history now that we have these proofs. Oh, hang on. Oh, we got a problem. Got a problem. We still got to count by 50. Okay, let's do the 50 count. So go from 700 BC and count by 50, and as soon as you get near any of these dates, counting by 50, see what happens. Do they line up? Not one lines up. Not one matches. And I'm getting way ahead of my notes, but I'm so excited because I got 2 new dates to add on this and change this. If you count by 7, they all match. If you count by 50, none of them match. So what Nehemiah was doing there, he's reading the Torah. He's reading the Torah every 7th year. That's one of the commandments that you're to do for keeping the sabbatical year. You read the Torah in front of everyone. And we did this in Jerusalem for the first time maybe in over 2,000 years. We did this in 2009, 4 men, me, myself, me, and 3 other men. And we read the Torah out loud. All of it. Taking a turn, each man reading 1 chapter at a time, taking turns. And I learned stuff that I thought I knew by hearing someone else say it. And we had thousands of people going by us. It was kind of embarrassing. No, it was exciting. They thought we were nuts. That's okay. They heard something as we went by. You're to read the Torah every 7th year. So everybody gets to hear it. While I'm here, let me tell you something else. You're to forgive the debts of anyone who owes you money in the sabbatical year. And that one is hard to swallow. But you're to forgive their debts. And I did it because I was told to do it. And they owed me thousands of dollars. It wasn't hundreds, wasn't tens, it was thousands. And it was tough just to let it go. And as soon as I wrote them a letter and said, you're done, you're free of the debt you owe me, they said, we'll pay you. Well, I've only been trying to choke you for 4 years. Now they want to pay me. No, I can't accept it now. It's a sabbatical year. Your debt is free. You don't owe me nothing. If you send me anything, I got to tear it up or throw it out. I can't keep it. Okay, what happened? Well, you've all had a big recession here starting in the sabbatical year. And it's all been hitting the housing industry. And I work in the housing industry. And if we don't have new houses, I can't put in new ditches to them. And I've been busier than the son of a gun. I've been working 20-hour days. Have I been blessed because I kept this law? I think so. I think so. Keep these laws. Read this Torah. Don't plant. Don't harvest. Read the Torah out loud and forgive people their debts that owe you. And that includes forgive those who have hurt you. Your parents who have hurt you when you were a child. Your brothers, your sisters, that stranger, whoever it is, you got to forgive them. Forgive them their debts. It's not just cash, it's also their sins against you. So, we talked about Wacholder and Zuckerman, Schur and Marcus. Kadesh LaYahweh Press. Everybody needs to get this book. Kadesh LaYahweh Press. It's online and it's free. I know you're Americans, so it's free. Get this book. It's free. So you want to get, and just in case you didn't know, it's free. You can download it offline, And it takes every sabbatical and Jubilee year that we had in our chart, and it shows you and proves when they were. And it takes every argument that Wacholder, Zuckerman, Schur, and Marcus provide and shows you where they hide the truth. They hide the truth. Why? To prove their own theory correct. There's the URL right there. Write it down. www.yahweh.org. And then you just click on the book section, the publications. This was a huge teaching that we just did. Unbelievable. So where do the false teachings come from? Where did it all begin? Here we have the dates from 701 BC all the way down to 140 Common Era. Those are provable by Wacholder or by Kadesh Yahweh Press. Undeniable dates. Get that book and read it and prove this, because this is your best armament. If you believe in 50, none of them work. If you go by 7, every one of them work. Get that. So where does it change? What happened? Well, up until this week, that was the last date I had for my proofs. But I got 2 new ones. This is so awesome. This is what happened, the Bar Kokhba revolt. Rabbi Akiva wanted to prove Simon Bar Kokhba was the Messiah. So what he does is he gets one of his students, and I've got this in Remembering the Sabbatical Years of 2016. It's in the book. It's explained for you, because people will use this to deny what you're saying. Get the book. Read it. There's a chapter. Here's how you can argue again. You may have to read it. Show it to them. Rabbi Akiva wanted to prove Simon Bar Kokhba was the Messiah. The star, he quotes that scripture, and I forgot it. Numbers, the rising star, son of the shining star. I think that's it. And Simon Bar Kokhba said he believed he was that shining star. But then he got killed. Oops. That didn't work out too good. But Rabbi Yossi, who was a student of Rabbi Akiva, wrote this book called the Seder Olam. And most people use the Seder Olam as a chronology of history. So now, it's proving that Simon Bar Kokhba is the Messiah. It's proving. But in order to do that, it had to change, it had to fudge the dates of when the temples were destroyed. Oops. And he's doing the same thing, and he's using what we've already explained to you all this week about the Daniel timeline. He's using that 490 years to prove Simon Bar Kokhba is the Messiah. And that's where Christianity locks onto it afterwards and starts to use it for the Messiah. And we've shown you how that doesn't work and is not true. We've proven it beyond a doubt. So, Simon Bar Kokhba is killed. Rabbi Akiva is killed. This teaching, Seder Olam, by Rabbi Yossi is still there. Now all the sages, all the genomes, all the teachers of Judah take this teaching. They know that that part about Simon Bar Kokhba is wrong. But the chronology, they accept and do not dispute. Their own Talmud, Babylonian Talmud, Jerusalem Talmud, says the temple was destroyed in 70 AD. History records the temple destroyed in 70 AD. But the Seder Olam on page 30 questions that, and it sounds like he's saying it's 69 AD. And then they put a fence around the sabbatical years because of the blowing of the shofar and the misunderstanding of that scripture, thinking that it's a half a year earlier. So they move it a half a year earlier, and now it's a year and a half out by some. Starting at Rosh Hashanah. So Zuckerman, Marcus, Wacholder, and Schur all go with this same assumption, and you use Seder Olam as their basis of operandi. You start on a faulty foundation, and you're going to end up with a faulty conclusion. Rabbi Yossi twisted the history. Rabbi Akiva approved of it. And all of the Judaism since then has accepted that as correct. The Mishnah, Talmud, Genome, even the modern day scholars, Benedict, Zuckerman, Schur, Marcus, and Wacholder. And now people are using that to decide when the Sabbatical and Jubilee years are. But they don't match the recorded ones in history. So according to these teachers and these sages, the next sabbatical year will be from Tishri, which is Rosh Hashanah in 2014, to Rosh Hashanah in 2015. Or Tishri 2015 to Tishri 2016. We're saying in this book, we're saying here on the screen, we've been telling you all week, showing you and proving it to you, the next sabbatical year, according to all recorded sabbatical years in history, and lining up with them, is 2016. Then the one after that is 2023. And then the one after that is 2030. And if you're still alive, the one after that is 2037 and then 2044. And I hope to see you there at the Jubilee in 2045. Woo-hoo! All the known dates I have shown you match up with each other only one way. And that is if you use the month of Aviv to begin a year. That's the only way they match up. And they only match up if you count by 7. So Judah began to record all their history books after they got kicked out of the land. And they used the Seder Olam as a basis of their understanding. But it was wrong. It's still wrong. And they hedged it in because of a misunderstanding of this verse. Then you shall cause the trumpet of the Jubilee to sound on the 10th of the 7th month in the day of atonement. The trumpet shall go sound throughout all your land. That trumpet is blown in the 50th year. The 50th year, not the 49th. It's after the 49th year that is blown. And you shall make the 50th year holy, 1 year, and proclaim liberty throughout the land to all its inhabitants. It shall be a jubilee to you, and you shall return each man to his possession. The next Jubilee year, think about it, the next Jubilee year is the time that we will be returned. That is awesome. But the birth pains are coming, and I've explained the birth pains to you this week, and they're going to be very hard. Very hard. So because they fenced in the sabbatical year, trying to protect it, because these men misunderstood the truth and misapplied it, and because these same men hid the truth when they found it, we have a misunderstanding today. Again, explained in detail in there, and I don't want to bog you down here today. But here we have a little example. Year 2 of Nero, Caesar. He declared by Ashlon, this is what it reads in one of these contracts. Year 2 of Nero Caesar in Zaya, declared by Ashalom, Bar Canaan, of Zaya, in his presence, of my own free will, that I, Zechariah Bar Yehuchanan, dwelling in Keslon, silver and money pieces 20, acquiring, I, pieces rubbed out, not sell until the time this I will pay you in 5, and possibly in its entirety this year of Shemitah. And if not so, I will make a payment to you from my properties, and those things that I will buy later will be pledged to you as a mortgage. So by knowing this piece of contract and relating it to the second year of Nero, we can determine that this year, the 12th year of Nero was 66, so we can determine the second year. We know when the Shemitah year is. These are the artifacts that we found. That not we found, they found. There's proof, there's real proof from real people. So from that artifact, we count the years, we come to 56. Common era. 701 BC, Sennacherib attacks Judah, 2 Kings 19:29. That is your benchmark year. Undisputable year. All chronologists agree with that year. 700 BC, 2 Kings 19:29. It's a Jubilee year. You just read it. Nehemiah 8:18. They're reading the Torah. 1 Maccabees 16:14. Josephus also. 1 Maccabees 134, 162 BC, 134, 43 BC, recorded by Julius Caesar. These are undisputable dates. Kadesh Yahweh Press goes into detail so you can prove them, so you can know them. You need that book in your armory. It's free. So the year that the temple was destroyed, here it is recorded by a Roman historian. The first year of January of the year that Vespasian assumed the consular office was 70 common era, chosen by his father Titus to complete the subjugation of Judea. And later, that same year, 70 common era. Now he didn't say which year. This is from the Encyclopedia Britannica. Again, these four men hide the truth. Hide the truth. They don't give it all to you. They just give you what fits their theory. And these are the known authorities today. Rabbi Yossi starts by fudging the truth in the Seder Olam, and then people accept it as the truth. And then they start arguing over these dates, where they start at Rosh Hashanah or Aviv. And you can prove them.
Joseph F. Dumond explores every question about the sabbatical and Jubilee years in Remembering the Sabbatical Year 2016. In order to understand the truth, you have to expose those things that are not true. What is left is then the facts. Remembering the Sabbatical Years examines all the theories put forward as to when the sabbatical years were, and then using your own Bible shows you how to be able to prove it for yourself. Once you do this, then you too can understand prophecy and in what season the Messiah is to come. Filled with groundbreaking insights, Remembering the Sabbatical Years of 2016 is both a source of wisdom and practical knowledge on an important yet complex subject, and a necessary guidebook for prevailing through today's times. The Creator of the universe has set upon His creation a construct of keeping time, and within that construct of keeping time, He has also given certain instructions. These markers of time have everything to do with prophecy as well, for they are the language by which boundaries are set and milestones are crossed. Prophecy affects every living human being on the planet, and so the reader becomes the main character in this book. We have, for all the world, an example of a people who kept and also did not keep the Sabbath years as instructed, and you will see what happened to them in each of these cases. You cannot afford to be ignorant of these things. The curses for not keeping the sabbatical years are happening now all around us, and they are getting worse. We are to wrestle with the Word to get the truth. Get your copy today and begin to understand world events today from a biblical understanding.